to the Truth in My Days podcast, where we defend the Word of God against the challenges of men.
Hi, I'm Dana Torst, and welcome to another episode of the Truth in My Days radio program. Today, I'm here with John Torst and Jason Chan as they discuss the important topic of creation and evolution. We are continuing from the previous episode. We hope you enjoy.
Anything else?
Well, another question I had about the biblical account was, I haven't done the math, but how does the math work out to go from Adam and Eve to Cain to people spread all across the globe within 6,000 or so years?
Actually, a number of creationist groups have done the mathematics on this, including Creation Ministries International. And I believe that the number was something like a 1.02 population growth rate per generation.
I see.
In fact, population growth is a much bigger issue for evolution, because if human beings have actually been around as long as evolution says, the human population should be very, very much bigger than it is now. But it's certainly, biblically, it's not a problem. Okay. And you're an engineer, I'm sure you can do the numbers. Start out with an initial population of 2, and understand we've had exponential growth since about 1850. I think at the start of the 20th century, the world population was something like 1.6 billion.
Okay.
So for most of human history, the growth was relatively low. And it really, from the Industrial Revolution onwards, it started rising, and then it really took off in the 20th century. So really, from creation to the start of the 20th century, you would have had to reach about 1.6 billion. And if you do the numbers, take your age of the Earth, which anywhere from 5,575 years to 7,686 years, those are the limits, and do the calculations. Yeah. And you'll find it actually does work very, very well.
Okay, I see. Another question related to that is, I've heard some people have an issue with, where did Cain's wife come from?
Yes, where did Cain's wife come from? If you look in the Bible, there can only be one place where it came from, and that would have been from among his relatives. People say, well, there was just Cain and Abel, so where would he get them? Well, we actually know that Adam had sons and daughters. He didn't have just the ones that are mentioned by name. The Bible does tell us that Adam lived and he had sons and daughters. So Adam and Eve, who were told actually fill the earth, that's their mandate. They had 930 years or so to do it. They would have had a lot of sons and daughters.
Okay.
The story of Cain and Abel, we don't know how old they were at the time. We don't know how old Adam and Eve were at the time. We assume these were the first 2 sons and they were the only ones who were there. They might have been the first 2, but by the time the murder happened, there might have been many, many other mature human beings who'd already spread out in the world, or at least in that area.
Sure.
I don't think they'd filled the entire world yet. And again, you could do the numbers, 930 years, how many could they have had?
Sure.
And yes, they would have had to draw their spouses from among their immediate relatives, which to us seems to be a very ghastly idea, and it is, and it's forbidden in the Mosaic law, and it's illegal in Western countries. Generally, why though? What is the problem with it? Why is it illegal?
Because of birth defects that could occur. At least that's the biological side of it.
Yeah, why? Why do birth defects or other kind of genetic defects, why do they occur?
I'm not too sure about that.
Well, generally, you have a mutation in a gene that causes some kind of problem. Fortunately, we have genes for each trait from mother and father. Usually the bad gene is recessive, which means you get one gene, it's not a problem because you got a good gene from the other parent. The problem comes when you get the bad gene from both parents.
I see. Okay.
So when it's the same family, chances are much higher that you'll get a bad gene from both sides. And yes, you'll get various kinds of problems. Mental deficiencies.
Right.
And you got a lot of that, unfortunately, happening in the the royal families of Europe for a while, because they tended to intermarry a great deal. Even in Abraham's time, Sarah was his cousin whom he married. But here's the thing, at the very beginning, you didn't have this massive genetic degradation in the human race. That's been built up across the centuries. At the very beginning, the genomes were pure. They might have started to degrade, but there would have been a long time to build that up to the point where it was an issue.
I see.
In those days, it wasn't. And perhaps there wasn't a sense of revulsion, and that developed later, and God's prohibition on it also came later.
Okay.
So it strikes us as strange, but that's how it had to have happened. Right. And once again, it's a bigger problem because for the evolutionist, because if you have these ape-like creatures and they're slowly becoming man, at some point an ape-like creature would have had to give birth to something that had crossed the threshold into man. Where does he get his spouse from? He's the only man on the planet.
Yeah.
Something they don't like to think about.
Okay.
Any other questions? And these are good ones because people do ask these all the time.
Yeah.
Any others?
That's all that comes to mind for now.
All right. If there are other questions, feel free to send them into Truth in My Days. We're going to look now at a related issue, which some Christians do try to separate, and that's the age of the earth. You look through Genesis, and God created the world and the life in it across 6 Earth rotation days. Normally 24-hour days. They might have been a little bit shorter in those days, but essentially 24-hour days. Days as we know them. Sun up, sundown, next morning, days.
Okay.
And so that will take the entire point from the creation of the world to the first human beings, 6 days, 6 Earth rotation days. Evolutionists reject that. Evolutionists claim that, no, this happened across millions of years, billions of years. In fact, they'll tell you the Earth is about 4.6 billion years old.
Yeah.
The entire universe is about 13.6 billion years old. And we have all kinds of scientific proof for that, they say. And interestingly, there are a lot of Christians, I call them old earth creationists, who reject the theory of evolution, who accept the Genesis account, but at the same time, they try to fit in old earth. They try to fit in the idea that the earth is 4.6 billion years. So I'd have to say then that Adam and Eve came along, pretty almost right at the end of that period. And the whole human history after that, it was just like a 0.0001% or whatever of the entire history of the earth. So God built an earth, and then for about 4.6 billion years did nothing with it, and then made Adam and Eve and all of history after that. So they reject the supposed scientific claims for evolution, but they do accept them for the age of the earth. And they think they can separate the two. The problem that we run into here is that the Bible says both. Now, they will say the Bible doesn't tell you how old the earth is. They will tell you that even if you have 6 24-hour days, we don't know if there's a long period of time before that. And they've cooked up various types of attempts to reconcile the two ideas. One that was popular a long time ago was the gap theory, which tried to insert a gap in time between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2, where they would say, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then 4.6 billion years went by. And then verse 2, and the earth was without form and void. And then the rest of Genesis story continues from there. And so they try to shoehorn a gap into Genesis. And often they started building on this and had an entire scenario where the earth was originally inhabited and Satan was there, and then there's rebellion against God, and in the rebellion God destroyed the earth, and it became without form and void, and then God restarts with Adam and Eve. So some of these schemas became very elaborate.
Oh.
And now you have a whole bunch of other ones from old earth creationists who will say things like, Genesis 1 isn't really about creating 6 24-hour days. It's not even about creation. It's about God outfitting the earth as his throne. And you just have to understand ancient Near Eastern pagan literature to see that, because, the Bible's essentially it's just another piece of ancient Near Eastern pagan literature written by people who thought those ways, even though what they thought was we know to be incorrect now, but that's okay. Doesn't matter. A lot of different ways to try to fit the two together. Now, when we looked before at the creation account, we saw there's no way to change days into anything other than 24-hour days. So these people, the old earth creationists, will accept that part, usually. Sometimes no. But we already showed you why, from the Hebrew, why the word cannot be taken as anything else. Yep. So some of them will try to, as I say, resort to something like a gap theory.
I see.
That also doesn't work, though. The Hebrew doesn't allow for that either, because if you look at the syntactical structure of the account, what you have is this won't mean anything to you probably, but a cal-perfect verb in the first verse followed by a series of what's called vayiktos, preterites. And that indicates an action followed by another action, followed by another action, followed by an action directly. No big gaps of time in between.
Okay.
It can't be written off as poetry either. The Hebrew syntax shows, or grammar shows that as well. But I have to know more about Hebrew than you do to get into details of that.
Okay.
But here's the real issue. They will tell you the Bible doesn't tell you how old the earth is. And it's true, there's no one verse that says the earth is 7,686 years old. It can't, because every year you'd have to change that number.
Sure.
But does it take you to a known points in history so that we can know how old the earth is? And the answer to that is yes, because we have the 6 days. We know how old Adam lived to. We know how old he was when he had Seth. We know how old Seth was when he had Enosh, and so on. These are listed in Genesis chapter 5, Genesis chapter 10, and what are called chronogenealogies. Okay? So they don't just say the names of the people that so-and-so begot so-and-so. Because when that happens, then people will say that, wow, maybe there are gaps in the genealogies. Maybe they don't mention every person. When Hebrews says, son, it's any lineal descendant. It could be a son, could be a grandson, could be a great-grandson, and so on. And that's true.
Okay.
So I said there could be gaps in genealogies. Maybe this was really much, much longer in time than we think. They don't stop and think about the fact this doesn't help them, because what they need is long periods of time before Adam, not after Adam.
Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. But please join us for the next part tomorrow. Same time and same place. If you enjoy our content and think this is important material, the best compliment you can pay is by sharing this with your friends and family. This helps us out a lot. Also, if you enjoyed today's program, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening to the Truth in My Days podcast with John Torse. We would love to hear from you. Please feel free to share any questions or comments you may have. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, and YouTube. Simply search Truth in My Days as one word. Again, Truth in My Days as one word, no spaces in between. And you can connect with us. You may also visit our website for more comprehensive material and to learn more about our ministry. Our website is truthinmydays.com. Thank you.